The ceremonial blade hovered at Marcus Cole's throat, its black edge shimmering under the crystal lights of the Velathari council hall. 300 nobles watched him, every scale glinting, every claw poised. Sir, the High Commander, waited for the human to flinch. Marcus didn't. You dare petition for sanctuary, human? Sir hissed, silver scales brushing Marcus's face. Your species cannot even defend a single colony world. Marcus swallowed calmly. We held Kepler-7 for 6 years against the Dominion. We lost it only because our calls for help went unanswered. A murmur ran through the assembly. Sir's grip tightened. The blade nicked Marcus's skin, drawing a thin line of blood. Marcus didn't move. He had survived the fall of Kepler-7, the loss of his wife, the months adrift in a broken escape pod. Death no longer frightened him. A voice like winter wind cut through the hall. Every Velathari fell to one knee, including Sir. Marcus remained standing. Queen Velathari emerged from a hidden passage, her pale blue skin glowing faintly under the crystalline light. She moved like a predator in a dance, her robes trailing shadows across the polished floor. Nearly 7 feet tall, her angular features seemed carved from ice and starlight. She stopped 3 paces from Marcus and studied him with unblinking eyes. You are bleeding on my floor, human. Apologies, Your Majesty. I did not bring the blade. Something flickered across her face, surprise, perhaps irritation. The nobles held their breath. You do not kneel, she observed. I do not know how, Marcus admitted. I would rather stand and show respect than kneel and show ignorance. Velathari turned to Sir. Rise, Commander. Explain why you've drawn blood in my hall without my permission. My queen, Sir said, his scales darkening. The human has nothing to offer. No fleet, no resources, no influence. He is worthless. I did not demand, Marcus said quietly. I asked. There is a difference. Velathari's gaze returned to him. And what would you offer for sanctuary, human? Marcus thought for a moment. He had nothing, no ship, no homeworld, no family left. Labor, he said finally. I'm an engineer. I can fix things. Laughter rippled through the nobles, low and cruel. We have machines for labor, one scoffed. We have engineers born to ranks higher than your entire species. Then I have nothing, Marcus said. But I ask anyway. Velathari raised a hand. Leave us. The nobles filed out silently, Sir last, his eyes promising violence. The great doors closed with a tomb-like thud. Velathari circled Marcus slowly, observing him. You are not afraid. No, he admitted. I've already lost everything. Fear requires something left to lose. She stopped in front of him. The council will demand your execution. But you stand. Why? I speak the truth, Marcus said. I do not kneel, I do not lie, and I do not flinch because it serves no purpose. Velathari studied him a long moment, then whispered, I will come to your quarters tonight. Speak with you privately. Marcus froze. After the 3rd moon rises, she said, and tell no one. If you betray this trust, you will be executed for slander. Why? Because you are the first in 11 years to stand in my presence without calculating advantage. She turned, her robe sweeping across the bloodstained floor. Marcus sat on the edge of his sparse bed, unsure if he anticipated interrogation, assassination, or conversation. When the 3rd moon rose, a section of the wall slid open, and Velathari entered, now in simpler robes, smaller, almost human. You are here, Marcus whispered. Did you doubt me? She replied. They spoke quietly, sharing truths about grief and loss. Marcus recounted Kepler-7, the bombardment, his wife's death, the desperation, and the small courage it took to keep the engines running. I understand tired, he admitted. I understand being so exhausted that dying seems simpler than continuing. But I also understand that sometimes you fix the engine anyway because people depend on you. Velathari listened, still. And now what keeps you going? Nothing, Marcus said. Maybe that's why I came here. Hoping for purpose or resolution. Either way, it's something. She nodded once, And for the first time, Marcus saw a flicker of recognition in her gaze. Not warmth, but acknowledgement. "You would do this for a queen who offers only provisional survival?" she asked. "I do it because it is right," Marcus said. "And because you talk to me like a person, not furniture." Velathari paused, touched his hand lightly, and left him with access to the palace systems. "Begin repairs," she said. "Do them quietly. Document everything." Months passed. Marcus worked double shifts, fixing sabotaged systems, documenting anomalies, building a case. Velathari visited unpredictably, sometimes discussing engineering, sometimes politics, sometimes loneliness. They built a quiet bond, one of mutual recognition and trust. Then, one night, everything came crashing down. SIR's agents discovered Marcus's secret repairs. The council convened an emergency session. Secondary systems began to fail. Marcus was arrested, chains clinking, and brought before the assembled nobles. "Unauthorized access," SIR shouted. "Tampering with the palace's systems. Espionage. Attempted assassination." Marcus presented his documentation, detailing deliberate sabotage from SIR's oversight committee. The council hesitated. One human against a high-ranking commander seemed impossible to believe. Velathari rose from her throne. She spoke slowly, deliberately. "I have reviewed Marcus Cole's documentation. It proves systematic sabotage. It proves intent to kill. It proves a betrayal within my council lasting 11 years. SIR's composure cracked. "Impossible." "I believe evidence," she said. "Not superstition. Not curses. Evidence." The chamber erupted. SIR was seized, stripped of rank, and confined pending execution. Velathari walked to Marcus, chains falling away. "You saved yourself," she said softly. "Perhaps," he replied. She touched his face, publicly, in full violation of every tradition. For the first time in 11 years, Velathari allowed herself to acknowledge connection, trust, and recognition. Marcus and Velathari stood together, not touching, not declaring, simply present. It was not a fairy tale ending. It was fragile. It was uncertain. But it was enough. It was a beginning. The council chamber buzzed with chaos. Velathari's proclamation had stunned the nobles into disbelief, but Marcus felt something shift deep in the air. He was free, his chains gone, yet the tension clung to every surface of the crystalline hall. SIR's agents, now disorganized, whispered among themselves, uncertain whether to fight or flee. Velathari turned toward Marcus, her pale blue eyes calm and sharp. "Do you understand what you have done?" "I stood," Marcus said simply. "I spoke truth. I repaired what needed repair. That's all I can do." She studied him, her expression unreadable. "Somehow, you have reminded them that courage matters. That action matters. That honesty matters. Among my people, those are dangerous ideas." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous for them. Necessary for you." Velathari gave a small nod, as if that alone justified the rebellion of a human among Velathari traditions. She walked to the podium, gesturing for silence. "The council will continue, but on my terms." SIR, restrained by royal guards, hissed. "You will regret this, Velathari. Elevating a human above a commander, this is madness." "Perhaps," Velathari replied evenly. "Or perhaps it is survival." Her gaze flicked to Marcus. "You have done more than survive. You have made me see what has been invisible for too long." The assembly simmered, some faces pale, others red with indignation. Velathari gestured. "High Commander SIR will be confined pending full investigation. Any attempt to manipulate records, sabotage, or challenge the crown will be met with immediate execution." The words hung in the air. For 11 years, Velathari had ruled in isolation, her authority respected but her presence untouchable. Now, with a human at her side, the court had to reckon with a new reality. Marcus, though exhausted, felt a strange sense of calm. The weight of weeks spent in secrecy, repairing machines, documenting sabotage, and surviving political intrigue had led him to this moment. He was no longer invisible. He had mattered. rebuilding and the engineer's role. In the following weeks, Marcus was officially assigned to the engineering cast, no longer just a provisional laborer. His knowledge and meticulous records proved invaluable. Systems that had been failing unnoticed for decades were restored, and the palace's infrastructure began to hum like a living organism. Velathari observed quietly from her throne, sometimes descending to inspect the work personally. She asked questions, not in command, but in curiosity, about human methods, reasoning, and decision-making. Marcus explained each repair, each adjustment, each subtle improvement. She listened, fascinated. "You are efficient," she said one evening, after inspecting the Eastern Wing's newly stabilized systems. "And yet, you do not act for praise or recognition. You do this because it is necessary." "That's what engineers do," Marcus replied. "We fix what is broken, even if no one notices. Even if no one cares." Velathari smiled faintly, a rare expression that made Marcus pause. "It is alien to my people to act without calculation, without anticipation of reward. And yet," her voice trailed, "and yet, it is right." In the quiet of the engineering chambers, Marcus began to see the palace not just as a fortress, but as a world unto itself. The hum of machinery, the flow of energy through conduits, the subtle vibrations beneath the floor, he felt it all, mapping each system in his mind. Velathari, despite her status, allowed him freedom in his work. He discovered patterns of neglect and intentional sabotage in other wings, evidence that the council had maintained for years under the guise of tradition. Each time Marcus presented a discovery, Velathari acted swiftly, quietly removing threats and rewarding diligence. The human and the queen. Though Velathari's public appearances remained formal, her private interactions with Marcus grew. They spoke in hidden corridors, behind maintenance doors, among the hum of stabilizing engines. They did not touch beyond the first feather-light contact that had startled the court. Instead, they shared thoughts and experiences. "I do not understand why your people value machines over honesty," Marcus said one night, repairing a compromised conduit in the palace's energy core. "We survive through calculation," Velathari replied. "Trust is dangerous. Emotion is dangerous. But perhaps we have survived too well. Perhaps we have forgotten what it is to act purely because it is right." Marcus paused. "That is the human way, sometimes. We don't always survive. We just keep going." Velathari considered him, eyes reflecting the soft blue glow of the machinery. "You are strange, human. And yet, I cannot deny the clarity you bring." "Clarity is different from power," Marcus said. "But it can change outcomes just as much." Velathari leaned back, studying the shadows. "You remind me of someone I lost. My consort. Not for the role, not for duty, but for the person they were. You remind me that connection exists beyond calculation." The air was thick with unspoken truths. Both understood grief and loss, though from different worlds. Both had endured isolation. And both were discovering that survival was no longer enough. They craved purpose and recognition. The threat lurking within. Sir, confined but cunning, had not surrendered entirely. From his quarters, he attempted to manipulate other council members, spreading rumors, creating doubt, and bribing sympathetic nobles. Marcus and Velathari anticipated these moves, documenting evidence and intercepting communications. One night, Marcus discovered a network of secondary sabotage, secondary conduits that had been weakened intentionally to destabilize the palace's energy grid. He realized Sir had planned for Velathari's death to look like an accident, even while Marcus repaired the main systems. "This isn't just sabotage," Marcus said to Velathari. "It's assassination. If I hadn't been here, you would have died in your own palace." Velathari's jaw tightened. "And the council will see it as human interference, not protection." "Then let them see," Marcus said. "The evidence speaks for itself." The council's reckoning. Velathari summoned the council to the grand hall. Marcus, now respected, stood beside her openly. Sir, still restrained, glared at them. Velathari began, her voice echoing through the crystalline chamber. "For 11 years, my court has tolerated neglect, superstition, and betrayal. Today, Evidence of deliberate sabotage and intent to harm is presented before you. Marcus stepped forward, presenting documentation, logs, and repair records. Each noble examined the records, faces shifting from disbelief to horror. "Commander, sir," Velathari said, "you have attempted assassination, tampered with systems, and manipulated the council for personal gain. Your actions are treason. Your rank and title are revoked. You will be confined pending judgment and, if evidence holds, executed." Sir's protests echoed but fell on deaf ears. Velathari's guards moved with precision, and the council murmured, realizing the full scope of the betrayal. Marcus's role was acknowledged. Though a human, he had acted without calculation, without desire for power, purely for integrity. Velathari's nod toward him was subtle but unmistakable. He had earned trust and respect. A new beginning. Weeks passed. Marcus continued work in the engineering cast, now with full authority and respect. The palace's system stabilized, and the once oppressive atmosphere of fear and suspicion began to lift. Velathari, though still cautious, allowed herself more interaction with Marcus. She asked for advice, for observations, for insight, sometimes about engineering, sometimes about human behavior, sometimes about leadership. She began to understand connection, curiosity, and mutual respect in a way her people had never permitted. In quiet moments, they stood together overlooking the crystalline gardens, watching the alien flora hum and shimmer. No words were needed. Presence was enough. They shared a fragile understanding, a partnership unspoken, but profound. "I do not know what comes next," Velathari said one evening, the moonlight dancing across her robes. "Neither do I," Marcus replied. "But at least we face it together." "Yes," she said. "Not as queen and human. Not as ruler and subject. But as," she hesitated, "partners, perhaps. For now, that is enough." The court watched in quiet suspicion, whispers spreading, but the palace had changed. One human had reminded the Velathari that courage, honesty, and integrity could reshape even a rigid empire. Marcus understood that his losses would never fully heal, and Velathari understood that isolation had a cost beyond survival. Together, they discovered that the future was not dictated solely by tradition, power, or fear, but by choices, courage, and trust. It was not a perfect ending. There would be more challenges, more intrigue, more trials. But for the first time in years, Velathari and Marcus stood at the center of the palace not as victims of history, but as architects of the next chapter. The stars beyond the crystalline walls gleamed with possibilities. The human had stood when the stars fell. And now, he would help the Velathari rise stronger than ever.